right, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your current location, and it is a real pleasure to be here with you. I want to thank the World System Solution team for inviting me to deliver this talk, and my name is Emiliano Bosio. I'm a professor of education based in Japan, and I've authored and co-authored multiple scientific articles in the field of global citizenship, critical, transformative, ethical, values-based pedagogy, collaborating with scholars such as Carlos Alberto Torre, Henry Giraud, Youssef Aktid, Peter McLaren, and others. So some of my recent books include, as you can see on screen, Conversations on Global Citizenship Education in Routledge, Global Citizenship Education in the Global South in Broll, Value Creating Education in Routledge, The Emergence of the Ethical Engaged University in Springer, and international journal publications include Exploring Values and Knowledge in Global Citizenship Education with William Gaudelli, Carlos Alberto Torres, Ethical Global Citizenship Education with Anne Shuttle, and Critical Pedagogy and Global Citizenship with Henry Giraud. So currently, as Tracy shared with you previously, I'm guest editing with Youssef Aktid, who is based in South Africa, and Silken Schraub, who is based in Germany, a new special issue in the UNESCO International Review of Education on philosophical, ethical, and pedagogical perspectives on global citizenship education, a critical examination with educators from the global north and the global south. So if you're interested in this topic, please feel free to get in touch. I guess the team later will post some of the details, and you can contact me anytime. Let me also mention that I'm the editor of the Global Citizenship Education video interview series. So this interview series on global citizenship is publicly available on YouTube, and the series to date has featured over 50 scholars worldwide, including James Banks, the father of multicultural education from the University of Washington, Beth Leask, La Trobe University, Simon Marginson, Oxford University, Hans de Witt, Boston College, among others. And so the Global Citizenship Education interview series provides what I call a video roadmap to relevant experiences in global citizenship education. And so the series aims to be a valuable resource for three groups of viewers: educators seeking to integrate their theoretical understanding of global citizenship into teaching practices, researchers new to global citizenship looking for dynamic starting points for their research, but also general viewers interested in learning more about the history, philosophy, and practice of global citizenship education. And so this webinar today is given by a scholar who is based in Japan, Tokyo, and who has collaborated with academics worldwide, including those in both the global north and the global south. So for instance, my experience includes working with scholars in countries such as South Africa, Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago, Malawi, Ghana, India, Zimbabwe, Mexico, Jordan, the United States, the United Kingdom, Israel, Canada, Brazil, Italy, South Korea, China, and Japan. And so in many ways, therefore, my teachings, and particularly my scientific publications and international talks, are informed and inspired, I would say shaped by the valuable insight from the numerous scholars who participated in my interview series on global citizenship. To give you an example, an excellent outcome of my international collaboration with experts across pedagogical fields is my recent book, Ethical Global Citizenship Education. And this will be soon published by Cambridge University Press and is available for preview in the Intercultural Communication series on their website. And so the book is partially informed by the rich variety of conversations I had with international scholars in my Global Citizenship Education video interview series. And I believe this will be an influential work, not only because it is published by Cambridge University Press, a highly respected publisher, but also because the book is written in a way that is accessible to both academics and general readers. So before we start, let me briefly share that I recently returned from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where I had the pleasure of speaking at the Times Higher Education Asia University Summit 2024. And so the panel titled Innovative Approaches to Curriculum Design and Skills Development addressed key questions related to global citizenship education, but I should say also more generally related to higher education and institutional educations worldwide. So for instance, how can universities strike a balance between specialization and an holistic education approach? How can we equip students for careers that do not yet exist? Should we integrate ethical, value-centric knowledge into the curriculum? So these are some of the key questions the panel addressed. And so the summit provided an excellent platform to explore themes of ethics, passion, sustainability, climate change, and AI in pedagogy and curriculum design. And so these discussions are central to the evolving role of educational institutions in shaping ethical future leaders and global citizens. And I believe that the topics of global citizenship education, new technologies, media platforms, AI, climate anxiety and climate change in young people, social justice, and contribution to the common good are all part of an interconnected web of challenges and opportunity. And so if discussed critically and ethically, they hold the potential to make our planet more just and sustainable. So what is global citizenship education? Global citizenship education is concerned with developing the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that learners need to be able to contribute to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful world. Ethical global citizenship education is a reflective educational framework that fosters ethical principles, for example, fairness, equality, compassion, and integrity, and knowledge. Ethical global citizenship education develops students' global understanding, self-awareness, cross-cultural compassion, and sense of accountability for achieving the common good at home and overseas, a readiness to speak out and become actively involved in efforts to address key issues of shared global concern and human values, such as empathy and unity towards sustainability. Ethical global citizenship education represents a pedagogical approach through which educators make a distinct commitment to students' liberation of the human spirit toward critical and global justice concepts. So the concept of global ethic informs and inspires ethical global citizenship education. The notion of global ethic, when used in the context of ethical global citizenship education, refers to all components of the learning teaching process as well as components of the student experience. And so this is a conceptualization of global citizenship education pedagogy and curriculum in which educators make a specific commitment to learners' emancipation of the human spirit. And so from an ethical perspective, some of the central orientations of ethical global citizenship education are promoting social justice and reduction of global and local inequality. I always stress the fact that global citizenship education is not only about the global, it's definitely about the connection between the local and the global. And so the aim of an ethically oriented global citizenship education, as I was mentioning, is then to assist learners in reflecting critically on their opinions and to assist them in being part of the creation of a new future with its roots in social justice and sustainability. This encompasses at least 5 key elements: decolonialism, caring ethics, ecocritical views, global moral consciousness, and humanity empowerment. So let me now discuss these 5 key elements. Let me address the first element, decolonialism. So the type of ethical global citizenship education I discuss in my publications and books promotes decoloniality and diversity rather than neutral universal subjectivities. We must develop in our learners what I call hyper self-reflexivity, with a pedagogical focus on dissensus that would assist learners in dealing with complexity and paradox. Let me address the second element, caring ethics. Ethical global citizenship education promotes the concept of cura personalis in Latin, or caring ethics in English, while encouraging learners to care for individuals and human rights as foundational pillar. And so from this angle, ethical global citizenship education represents a pursuit of holistic education encompassing outcomes that include spirituality, art, aesthetics, and ethics, as well as ambitions towards the creation of peace in line with the UNESCO Commission reports of Jacques Delors titled Learning the Treasure Within. And this emphasizes the importance of living in harmony with one another and with the rest of the planet, where planet has a capital P. Let me address the third element, ecocritical perspective. Ethical global citizenship education encourages ecological consciousness and supports learners to examine the injustice created by humanity's perception that it is the supreme being on earth. And so by swapping out ego for eco, we can move the focus away from a human-centric attitude. And therefore, one of the objectives of the ethical global citizenship education is to foster in our students eco-ethical consciousness that considers the environmental and social impacts caused by human decisions effectively indivisible. Let me address the fourth element, global moral consciousness. The global moral consciousness element of ethical global citizenship education I discussed in this webinar encompasses the cultivation of a type of humanistic consciousness that transcends national, ethnic, geographic, and even religious boundaries. And so this approach consists of an awareness of other perspectives, a single humanity as the primary level of community, and the moral consciousness to act for the good of the world, or I should say of the planet. It also encompasses elements of autonomy and carefulness. And so from these perspectives, I propose a vision of ethical global citizenship education as being modes of thought and action with the basis in the connection of humanity with autonomy and carefulness. And so autonomy herewith does not mean that the student is separate from society. Rather, it involves educators cultivating the students' relationships with others, and their support must develop the student appreciation for the notion of carefulness toward the other. And so this refers to the influence of the individual situation. It proposes that it is possible to be responsible for one's personal life and philosophy. And so humanity is a foundation that allows learners, at least hypothetically, to improve their human potential by reflection and dialogue, acquiring the necessary resources for living a worthwhile life based on the notion of carefulness and living in harmony with others on the basis of a moral code and assisting others in living in valuable ways. Lastly, let me address the fifth element, empowering humanity. I do believe that empowering humanity requires ethical global citizenship education to open a path for the personal improvement of every student, not only those white, rich, and located in the global north. From this angle, empowering humanity through ethical GC or global citizenship education embraces all aspects of human behavior. It emphasizes an interpersonal dimension which recognizes the human drive to live harmoniously and responsibly with others. I therefore believe that the type of global citizenship education we need today and in the future is ethically oriented. It fosters in our learners ethical and critical knowledge and values-based on 5 key elements: decolonialism, caring ethics, ecocritical views, global moral consciousness, and humanity empowerment. And I suggest that ethical global citizenship education should be part of an educational policy that is technically competent, ethically sound, and politically feasible. Ethically engaged or ethically oriented global citizenship education should find a special place in our university's curriculum. And indeed, global citizenship education, as I discussed it today in this webinar, in its ethical essence, raises questions not only about the meaning of global citizenship and global citizenship education itself, it also brings into view matters of the purposes of education and higher education and the kinds of human beings that education seeks to develop in the 21st century, the era of globalization, particularly in relation to the responses of higher education and education in general to neoliberal globalization and what we mean by ethical values and knowledge in education. Thank you for listening, and I'll be very happy to address your questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Bosio. That was wonderful. We wish that all schools and educational systems would have this framework that you've set up and shared with us. We would invite anyone here to ask a question to Professor Bosio or share a reflection.
Or they can write them in the chat is also fine.
Yes. How could you envision this type of model being shared globally most effectively?
So I think the events that you are putting together are one way, definitely a valuable way, because nowadays there is a need really to reconnect to our humanity first, within ourselves first, but then immediately after that, there is a need to reconnect to other human beings. And as Amy was mentioning in that lovely introduction, the fact that we are here today with different time frames and we are here to discuss important topics is definitely a first step to share such a complex framework, such as ethical global citizenship education, because we need to consider that when we discuss decolonizing pedagogy and curriculum, bringing in voices from the global south, ecocritical views, ecocritical consciousness, humanity empowerment, we are in a way going against the so-called bank model of education, what Paulo Freire defines bank model of education, all based on fostering skills for the international job market. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is that, as we can see clearly today, our leaders really lack values-based and ethical values and knowledge, because they are not able to engage in dialogue and create peace, a sustainable society. And so that tells me that even best schools and universities are not in the position of doing their job, because they are not fostering leaders who care about sustainability. So ethical global citizenship education, as we discussed it today, and as I'm discussing in many other talks and an invitation I receive worldwide, and particularly through my publications, which I see very much as something that I want to leave to the future generations as a way to read and get informed and engaged in discussions on sustainability and ethical values and knowledge, are excellent ways to promote a different way of conceptualizing how to educate our future leaders, because my daughter, my son, and if you are a parent, you know this very well, they will be the ones that potentially can change our society in a more sustainable way. I must say that what I see today from our leadership and politicians is not that encouraging. And so again, there is a need to rediscuss the purposes of education. And my contribution to this discussion is to bring in ethical discussions on ethical values, the importance of engaging in reflexive dialogue and ecocritical and ecoethical consciousness, global citizenship. I'd like to also mention, and I close, and I hope that in doing so, I kind of address this question. It is a very important question. So the notion of global citizenship is highly debated and can be interpreted from many, many, many different theoretical perspectives. Some are more neoliberal, all oriented in fostering this so-called global competencies. But others are really valuable, are more critical and ethically oriented. And they're really, one of the merits of this discussion on global citizenship is that brings back on the table a discussion on not having a passport to be a global citizen, rather to appreciate the local issues and then being able to get that appreciation into the global stage, right? Connecting the local and the global. And also another merit of this discussion on global citizenship is that it brings back this whole discussion on the real purposes of education. But it has to be discussed ethically and critically. Otherwise, it's just another way, it's just another marketing strategy, to push forward models of education that just work well with a slogan, right? But we want to really be serious. We want to discuss this on an ethical level, on a critical level. That's why I bring in a lot of collaborations with critical pedagogues and organizations like yours who care, you care about sustainability and ecology, and this is my interest. So yes, I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing all of that. We have another question from Tron. I hope I pronounced that right. As a future engineer, I would like to ask a question. How could GCED elevate the engineering careers and industries as a whole, especially in the context of developing countries like Vietnam? I could post it.
Expert in engineering, to be honest, and so can't really provide a detailed answer. What I should say is this: we must be able to embrace the concept of ethical global citizenship holistically, and so all the fields are welcome, all the expertise are welcome. We want to build an ethos permeating a new way of conceptualizing pedagogy and curriculum, and so all the skills, all the values, all the expertise are welcome, as long as they are not just oriented to the international job market. I think this doesn't work. It failed. Is fostering leadership, taking us into a wrong path. So we want to really bring in people independently from their expertise that really care about our shared planet. And so if this answers your question, or at least encourages you to bring in your expertise in revisioning the role of pedagogy and education for global citizenry and sustainability, that's great. Can't go deeper than that, to be honest, because I don't have the knowledge about engineering.
Totally understood.
But there is a second question about developing countries like Vietnam. So again, I'm not going into details about engineering, but what I will say is this: is that the perspectives, ethical global citizenship education welcomes indigenous knowledge. It welcomes global South perspectives, because we want to envision a platform welcoming all sorts of, and respecting and appreciating all sorts of educational traditions. And that's why the decolonial element comes first. And my colleagues at the beginning didn't understand why I would put the decolonial element first in a discussion on ethical global citizenship education, because without decolonizing our mentality, which is based only on the global north, westernized type of education, we can't change path. Even the concept of democracy today, it doesn't have any meaning, because which type of democracy we're talking about, which kind of values? I mean, democracy can be interpreted in many different ways. But if you're not embracing the global south, indigenous knowledge into this concept of democracy, and as well as in this concept of ethical global citizenship education and global citizenship, then it will be always lacking an element that is very important. And so perspectives and countries with such a rich cultural background, such as Vietnam, are more than welcome. I mean, we need to really embrace all cultural traditions.
Thank you. That was very important to hear. We have many questions, so we'll get to another one. Where might an educator interested in implementing this model obtain guidance, simple lesson plans, etc.? Are there any resources which include these things?
What's the name of the person who is asking this question?
Julie. I can repost it if you'd like.
Yes, because I can see several questions, so difficult
Yeah,
to
I'm going from top to bottom. There you go.
Okay. Interesting into this one thing. Okay, so I mean, you could get in touch, and I can share with you some links to my publications, and you can read. But I'm not the only one writing on the topic of ethical and critical. Well, ethical, yes, probably, but more critical perspectives on global citizenship. I collaborated, for example, with Emeritus Professor Youssef Fatid, who is based in South Africa and brings in a lot of voices from the global South, who is a philosopher of education, a distinguished philosopher of education. You can read my publications with Carlos Alberto Torres, who was one of the disciples of Paulo Freire. So first of all, I would recommend to get really a strong theoretical foundation. And then there are also ways to implement that's why today I put forward, and generally in my talk, I always put forward at least 4 or 5 principles, because based on that principles, you can expand. For example, there is a lot of literature on decolonizing curriculum and pedagogy, and a lot of authors really that can be implemented into a discussion in the classroom setting. For example, you can discuss the importance of critical consciousness development based on the writings of Paulo Freire. You can bring in perspectives from indigenous knowledge. Ubuntu is another concept that I discuss in my teachings, for example. There are many ways where you can simplify this sort of academic concept I share with you today into your and implement those into your teachings. But again, if you want a list, I believe the team shared in the chat some of my recent publications. There you can already find some good foundation. And then, feel free to contact me, and then we can have a dialogue about this too.
Wonderful. Thank you. From Daniel, how can we empower privileged students?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And I think we need to bring back at the center of discussions around pedagogy and curriculum dialogue. Dialogic approach to education is what we need today. Although there are a lot of boundaries, and academia has become super controlled, and universities, educational institutions, super controlled by politicians and so on, and it becomes really difficult to discuss, frankly, the issues that we see unfolding in our societies nowadays. There is always a lot of pressure, and it's difficult to discuss frankly certain issues. However, I think courageous educators can do that. We can do that. I think the empowering unprivileged students means, for example, putting at the center of pedagogical discussion social justice, social equity, sustainability, ethical values, decolonization. It means really also to and this is very, very important, not to believe that students cannot receive or cannot um, process certain discussions. They do, they definitely do. And if we are convinced ourselves as educators and pedagogues first, then they can process, and students can process and can develop on that. And I always say in my talks that knowing without acting is insufficient. And I will repeat this: knowing without acting is insufficient. But in order for students to act, they need to have the elements to process, and they need to have serious discussions that go beyond international skills for the international job market. So this whole discussion about global competencies, yes, it's important, global skills, but how about the values that we need for a different society? This is much less discussed in the classroom setting, to be honest, because it's seen as superficial, or it's seen as something that is uncomfortable to discuss, or doesn't have any direct link to the international job market, right? And so if it doesn't have a direct link to the international job market, then it doesn't count. Or if it doesn't help the students to pass a test, it doesn't count, it doesn't matter. And then our leaders are producing the kind of society that we see today. So, it's really dangerous, this way of thinking, where everything is funnelized to get the best possible job in the international job market. And then, okay, once you get the job, then if we have temperature rising and natural disasters on a daily basis, you can have the best possible job in this world, but there is not so much you can do, isn't it?
Yes, very.
There is no time. There is no time. There is no time for, you can't escape nature when nature decides to react. And so, you can have the best possible job and you can have a lot of money, but it doesn't change the matter, isn't it?
Very well said. Thank you for your frankness. We like that. We have a question from Amy. And I think you might have mentioned this already with leadership. What are the biggest challenges, barriers you see to getting these teachings integrated into the education institutions at scale?
Yeah, first of all, Japan is a clear example of test-oriented society educational system. And so I'm myself in a context that is exactly the opposite of my vision of education. And so that's interesting because that's the first element, and it pushes me even more to write what I write. But the United States is not different. The UK is not different. I have colleagues there, even very, very, very famous senior professors who are telling me that the situation is exactly the same as in Japan. So it's an international global problem that we are discussing. And the problem is that educational managers are all influenced by a neoliberal approach to education, which all focuses with a extreme and strong focus on and I repeat myself here, but I want to get this message across, is that this extreme focus on skills for the job market is not working if not harmonized with discussions on ethical and critical values, and discussions about how we are going to protect our planet, how we are going to engage with diversity, how we are going to engage in a dialogue, even if someone is defined sort of a dictator, or even dictators can be engaged in dialogue with, as if it's for peace and stopping death on a daily basis. Even dictators can be engaged in dialogue with. but we don't teach this to our students. We just teach them that, there is a bad person and a good person. So, this is a very frank example of, the type of education that we see nowadays. And so if this encouragement to engage in dialogue with diversity and with what others might define as evil or whatever is not there, then this hatred conversation about hating the other just increases. So yes, that's what is needed.
I posted Nasali's question that she had from earlier. How does cultural diversity impact global ethical education?
Nasali.
Yeah, how does cultural diversity impact global ethical education?
Yeah, so the cultural diversity is definitely, I would say, one of the elements characterizing global ethical global citizenship education. So in the sense that, as I mentioned in my presentation, the only way to have a serious discussion on fostering global citizenship is to welcome cultural diversity. That means to welcome perspectives from both the global north and the global south, indigenous knowledge, the philosophy of Ubuntu, for example. But there are many other concepts coming from indigenous knowledge that can be integrated in this discussion on cultural diversity. And so cultural diversity is not only impacting global citizenship education, it's actually a foundational part of this discussion on ethical global citizenship education. Because everything starts from decolonialism and then goes on in empowering humanity, respecting diversity, respecting the other, as I mentioned in my presentation, where the other has a capital O. This swapping out ego for eco, because we keep focusing on our society as human beings, but then we keep forgetting about non-humans. And so that's why the ethical element of global citizenship education also has the merit of bringing in this discussion on humans and non-humans, or more than human, as I mentioned in some of my publications. So, it's true that we are human-centric, that we keep focusing on, taking decisions based on humans only, but our ecosystem is much bigger and diverse. And so, bringing in this discussion on cultural diversity means also the word diversity also should include non-humans too. And something that sometimes we forget about, if you think about it, is we're not hearing our politicians. Have you heard a politician talking about more than humans, non-humans? I never heard. I'm always hearing about discussions about GDP, about numbers, but never about what's happening to non-humans, disappearing species, and so on. But never. There is never such a discussion.
That's
But
a really, yeah.
This is not entirely their fault. It's just that they have been educated to understand society in that way. That's why education is the root.
That's a very important point. Thank you. Hardson asked if there's any link where he can get a global citizenship course online or do it.
An entire course, I'm not sure. I did a search a while ago because I was asked to contribute to a project as a consultant. So I saw some courses, but they were not really fully engaged with all these discussions we are having today. So perhaps we could think of something. You can watch, as I mentioned at the beginning of this talk, or my presentation, you can watch my Global Citizenship Education interview series. That one is interesting because some of the guests, senior scholars, or practitioners are even critical of the concept of global citizenship, but they appreciate the fact that through these discussions, this interview series on global citizenship education, we can engage in a dialogue that brings in a variety and a diversity of elements that would rethink the real purposes of education. So if you're interested in watching videos, although there is not a full course at the moment, you could watch the Global Citizenship Education interview series. I believe the team shared the link at the beginning of my talk in the chat. That's interesting because besides I'm using that for my teachings, but it seems that it's well received by students because it's a very simple, friendly conversation accessible to academics and non-academics. So I would recommend that you take a look at my Global Citizenship Education interview series just to start building up a little bit of ideas about the diversity of perspectives that people have on global citizenship education.
That sounds great. Yes, and we'll put the link in a follow-up email to everyone as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have another question from Carrie. I'm going to put it in the chat here.
Okay. So I believe we need global and quick. Do you envision something potentially being passed for revision of educational requirements nationally as a bill, internationally through the UN? Well, I mean, we could there is always potential for drafting documents and proposals. I work a lot with UNESCO and both on the academic side and then research side, and but yeah, I mean, Kerry, if you have any idea in mind, feel free to private message me, and then we can discuss that. Difficult now to discuss this. It would require 30-40 minutes only to answer this, because it would get into a lot of details about more academic and more research oriented details. So yeah, Kerry, feel free to contact me on this. I would say I would answer this one like this.